Okay, folks. I don't know how many of you actually watched the debate, but my husband and I watched most of it. And I was also kind of paying attention to Steven Crowder's stream as well because they were doing a drinking game on Rumble, and it was kind of curious. But I'm wondering how many people noticed that this actor here kind of misspoke in the very beginning. And I didn't catch it at first, the first time that I watched it, when I was watching it live, but I started to document certain parts of it, and I wanted to document their handshake in the beginning. And when I just previewed and was listening to it, this guy completely misspoke. And if you watch, he was reading, something off of a piece of paper. But if you listen, he says something very curious. And you know, um, my conspiracy brain, if you will, if you want to call it that, immediately when stuff like this happens, I got to really wonder what is going on behind the scenes that we're just not privy to, you know, because these people, they're all in that club. George Carlin mentioned it. I've heard several other people mention it, and it's been pretty much written in the history books that there's a group of people that belong to a special type of a club, and we ain't in it. You know what I mean? And I think there's something deeper going on as far as continuity of government operations as well, not just here in the US, but around the world. Like all of these people are preparing for some absolute catastrophic, critical event. And the continuity of government operations have been going on for quite a while. And I don't know if you all know it or not, but Trump introduced a lot of executive orders, if you will, that directed our communications to be tightened and to have our federal agencies and our emergency agencies all coordinated with our local and our state authorities as well. So it's interesting to hear talk about Trump deputizing officers as well to handle this whole immigration thing. But see, I have so many takeaways from this debate, but I want to stick on point with this specific point right here. Could start right from the very beginning, so to speak, because right in the very beginning, this guy misspeaks. And if you watch, he's actually reading it. Listen to what he says. And I know Crowder didn't catch it because I was watching their live stream, and none of them said anything about it. They didn't even notice, and I didn't at
So
first.
let's get
But
started. I
listen to
want to
what he
begin tonight
says
with the
here.
issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight.
Who? Did you catch that? Let me replay it for you. Did you catch
Is
it?
their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and
No, no. Vice President Harris and Trump weren't elected 4 years ago. Vice President Harris and Biden were elected 4 years ago, but not Vice President Harris and Trump. And if you watch him, watch it again and listen, because I'm repetitive. I want you to watch it and watch him. He's reading it off of a piece of paper, folks. Why would he read the wrong name? Shouldn't his paper say Vice President Harris, you and President Biden were elected 4 years ago, which they were installed. We all know that.
with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country.
Now watch, as he says those words, Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago. He's reading it from a piece of paper, folks.
Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago,
Hello?
and your opponent on the stage here tonight.
I don't know, folks. I think there's something kind of deep going on here. And I think that's got to do with continuity of government operations. And when you look back on Trump's record, when he was in office, he signed a lot of executive orders and gave a lot of directives for us to get coordinated on our national response to critical, catastrophic emergencies. Okay, he gave directives and orders for all of these authorities from the local level into the state to the federal level to all coordinate and get coordinated. And he authorized a shit ton of money to be spent for all of these agencies and allocated a shit ton of money out to all of these agencies to fund creating scenarios and creating training sessions and drills for that very thing in the case of a catastrophic national event that destroys critical infrastructure or could threaten the government itself. So I don't know if this was necessarily an accident. I really don't. Because if you notice, most everybody is talking about all of these hot topics and stuff that they were discussing and about all of the so-called conspiracies. And I'm disappointed that Trump allowed her to get underneath his skin. I think he got a little bit too upset, myself personally.
So let's
I
get
think
started.
he probably could have control his temper a little bit because you can tell his face turns red and you can tell he's getting very frustrated with some of the crap she's spewing out. But I'm disappointed that they didn't inform him properly on the whole thing of people eating animals in Ohio because I've actually seen the body cam footage of the one chick that was eating a cat. And then I've seen additional footage, 2 separate videos of people showing dudes running around with geese and ducks with their heads cut off and stuff. And then I've seen a couple of other like eyewitness videos of people talking about some of the things that are going on in Ohio. So some of what Trump said was true, but the eating the dog thing, I haven't heard of any dogs, but I did hear about the cat. So I'm kind of disappointed in that aspect of it. But it to me, it wouldn't surprise me if they weren't trying to pull something behind the scenes where they just had this massive, complete, and deep deception going on right now. And what if what he said was actually true? You know what I mean? Because Biden really isn't all there, folks. Biden hasn't been all there for a long time. And I think they know it. And I think they pulled a fast one on everyone where they thought they were so special and they could prove, how powerful they are, that they could put this man that has Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or has some kind of mental disability in charge of the country and we would be just fine. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm reading way too much into it probably. But the fact that he's reading it from a piece of paper is interesting and curious to me, because if he was reading it from a piece of paper, you would think that that piece of paper would say, Vice President Harris, you and President Biden were elected 4 years ago and not you and President Trump. So
I want to begin
anyway,
tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say
yeah,
is their number one issue, and
I'm
that
gonna
is
put
the
it past
economy
him.
and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here.
No, Vice President Harris and Trump weren't elected 4 years ago. But did y'all see this too? I thought this was kind of curious. This was earlier today.
Months ago, Kamala Harris speaking with obviously New York Senator Chuck Schumer, see Kirsten Gillibrand behind her, Joe Biden next to her. Mike Bloomberg seems to be facilitating
and he does that like little thing where he
handshake
pulls and yanks her in
between
type of
Kamala
stuff.
Harris
But
and
watch what
Donald
he
Trump
does here
just
too. He
hours
winks.
after that debate in Philadelphia. The two candidates standing nearly side by side, nearly side by side, nearly side by side.
What is
nearly?
Wink? What's up with
side
that?
by
I'm just saying,
side.
just my conspiracy brain is on overdrive right now. So, and I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into this where he misspeaks, but I just think that's curious.
We predict the future. The best way to predict the future is to invent it.
Nearly side by side.